Hey folks, welcome back. Today I wanted to share some advice for anyone looking to get into the game for the first time. I recently realized that I've been writing scripts focused on the rules or gameplay mechanics without really addressing more pragmatic matters. Yeah, Heroscape looks fine and all, Slugger, but where do I start? Well, one of the great things about asking a question like that right now is that there's currently new Heroscape product on store shelves. For the first time in nearly 15 years, you can just go out and buy it. To that end, my first recommendation is to start with either the Age of Annihilation Master Set or the Battle for the Wellspring Battle Box. Inevitably, you're going to want both of them in the end, as their contents complement one another. For example, Rakchot doesn't have any familiars to bond with unless you get the battle box, and Fiabani doesn't have any squads to disguise against unless you get the master set. In addition, the battle box lacks any 2-hex terrain pieces, and the master set has a plethora of them. There's really no escaping the sense that the two were meant to be enjoyed together. It might then be easy to assume that these are both incomplete products, but I disagree. I've talked about this before in a previous video, but I think it was exceptionally wise of Renegade to break the content they inherited from Avalon Hill down into more digestible chunks. One of the core reasons the Avalon Hill HasLab campaign failed was that they set a backer goal larger than the number of current players in the community, and were trying to move a product that was too expensive to entice new players. Quite simply, it had no realistic chance of succeeding, and folks were even quick to point this out at the time. Renegade Game Studios surely looked at this debacle and took some pointers. A smaller, more incremental on-ramp is absolutely the way to go, and I think it's paid off tremendously for them. Right now, the new Master Set, Battle Box, or both is the best way to get into the amazing world of Heroscape. So, is that the end of the video? Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. Here's the thing. At least, in my opinion, the Age of Annihilation figures aren't really designed for new players. The figures were designed by a team at Avalon Hill known as the War Council. This council included many familiar and experienced faces in the Heroscape community, some of whom had years' worth of Heroscape figure design under their belts. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying these figures are poorly designed or anything, only that they're unoptimized for the uninitiated. They were designed by veteran players for veteran players, and it only takes a quick look at the army cards to prove it. Notice how so many of these cards feature 2 or more powers on them? Some even have 4 to keep track of. Let's compare that with Rise of the Valkyrie, the original master set that released back in 2004. Just taking a quick glance reveals a ton of cards with a single power on them. To quantify these differences, I made a couple of pie charts. On the left, we have all the figures in the Age of Annihilation Master Set and Battle Box. You can see that the vast majority of them feature either 2 or 3 powers, with old Killian Vane being the only single power figure included. When we contrast that with the Rise of the Valkyrie figures, we see a much healthier environment for new players. Nearly all of these army cards have 2 or less powers on them, with Agent Carr being the only outlier, and that's simply because he predates the practice of rolling Disengage and Ghost Walk into the Phantom Walk power. In essence, he's a 2-power figure too. So why am I harping on this so much? Well, I just want to be honest with you. While I maintain that the current Master Set or Battle Box from Renegade remain the best entry point into the game right now, I would be lying if I said the figures within were designed with new players in mind, because that simply isn't true. There's a significant learning curve inherent in modern Heroscape, and that largely stems inadvertently from the War Council figure designs not being well suited to the role they've been thrust into. Renegade's making do with what they've got, but I can tell you from experience, the added layers of complexity baked into the War Council designs doesn't make the task of teaching someone new how to play Heroscape any easier. There's really something to be said for basic designs, and it seems that mentality was lost somewhere along the way. So, with all that being said, why am I not just recommending that you go out and buy a Rise of the Valkyrie Master Set? They made 1 billion of them after all. Well, you can and probably should buy one at some point, but 20 years is a long time. Many of those plastic elements have become brittle with age, and I don't want to recommend rolling the dice on a purchase like that. Instead, I recommend relying on the modern sets for all the terrain and other components you need, then simply supplement this with the figures from Rise of the Valkyrie. The figures alone can often be found bundled together for very affordable prices online, or simply ask a friend who played it back in the day. Chances are they'll have some extras for you. Ultimately, this is the purchase path I recommend. Start with either the Modern Master Set, Battle Box, or both, then pick up the Rise of the Valkyrie figures. From there, nabbing the Swarm of the Marrow Master Set would be another solid choice, both for the figures and the new terrain it offers. I'd personally steer clear of most of the other old terrain sets though. They've become prohibitively expensive, and Renegade Game Studios has a ton of terrain expansions on the horizon that'll likely be more affordable. If you're looking to expand your army ranks beyond that, I recommend reading up on the figures of Classicscape to find something you're interested in playing. Proxying a few games with them before you purchase is always a good practice to make sure you like the way they play. Luckily for us all, Heroscape is a game that has exceptionally low power creep, if it exists at all. To this day, some of the most competitively viable figures come from that original master set. This is rare in games with a lifespan as long as Heroscape's. Ask a Yu-Gi-Oh player if my favorite monster card from back in the day could still win me some games in the modern meta, and you'll see what I mean. If you're interested in learning more about what makes certain figures competitively strong in Heroscape, then I recommend listening to the Casters of Valhalla podcast, hosted by some of the best players to ever play this game. Insightful commentary would be an understatement. I'll leave a link in the description. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or are looking for more specific collecting advice, ask away in the comments section. I've been your host, R.R. Slugger, and until next time, happy scaping.